Hi there, I'm Rex King. Welcome back to another episode of From the Archive. Studio Ghibli is probably the most well-known animation studio in Japan. If you asked any film goer to name a foreign animation studio, they're going to name Studio Ghibli. So, it was inevitable that we would talk about them on this show. But what film would I start with? One of their masterworks? Any film done by Hayao Miyazaki, who's probably their most well-known director? Well, that's too easy. So we're gonna go with a film directed by Hayao Miyazaki's son, Goro Miyazaki, Tales from Earthsea. So Tales from Earthsea, like I said before, was directed by Goro Miyazaki. It's actually based off a book series written by Ursula Le Guin, and Hayao Miyazaki had always wanted to do an Earthsea film, but couldn't get Ursula Le Guin to give him the rights, mainly because she didn't know who he was and was worried he might be a Walt Disney type person. Then she watched some of his works and realized he was the perfect choice for the job. And now you're all asking, wait a minute, wasn't this film directed by Goro Miyazaki, though? That's right. You see, Hayao Miyazaki at the time was knee-deep in Howl's Moving Castle, so the studio ended up giving the project to Goro Miyazaki, telling Ursula Le Guin that Hayao Miyazaki would oversee the project, which he didn't. So I can only imagine how happy she was to find out about that. Anyway, Tales from Earthsea was released back on July 29, 2006. It was a financial success at the box office, making $75.5 million on a budget of $22 million. And the critics weren't that kind to it. It was really split down the middle. They were not hating it, but felt it was missing something. And this was not helped by the fact that Hayao Miyazaki didn't like it either. In fact, he said his son had a lot of growing up to do. So, yeah, that did not help matters. Ursula Le Guin was a lot more kinder in her criticisms of the film, stating that it wasn't her film, it was Goro Miyazaki's film. She did feel like that some of the story choices didn't really convey what she wanted to convey with her stories. And I'll get more into that as I delve deeper into the story. So what do I think of Tales from Earthsea? Well, let's talk about it. So Tales from Earthsea takes place in Earthsea, a world that's becoming corrupted. The environment is going haywire, there's mass famine, dragons have appeared to attack each other, and wizards have started to lose their magic completely. During all this, Prince Aaron stabs his father, takes his magical sword, and runs off. While doing so, he runs into a powerful wizard by the name of Sparrowhawk, who just so happens to be the Archmage. Sparrowhawk and Aaron go on a journey. They end up meeting a female friend of Sparrowhawk, called Tenar. And she also has a ward that's kind of important to the film later on, named Tenru. I apologize if I mispronounced these names. I really couldn't understand how some of these names were pronounced in the film, to be honest with you. And they also discover that the person mainly responsible for all this chaos is this evil dark wizard named Cobb, who's seeking immortality, and doesn't mind if he's destroying the balance, that Sparrowhawk calls it, while doing so. So, this film's story is interesting. I really like the ideas that it's putting forth. Basically, the story's trying to have a conversation about how life is important and its cycle is important. The cycle of life and death, and how by disrupting it, you can affect everything on a large scale. Uh, Cobb's singular desire to be immortal is causing all sorts of chaos and is affecting the environment around him. And Sparrowhawk represents the opposite of that belief, saying that he should be focused more on life and trying to just live his life and not really be focusing on trying to obtain everlasting life. That death is important to the cycle, but it's not how we die, it's how we live that is important. In the middle of this argument, you have Aaron, who, after stabbing his father, really doesn't know where he fits in life at this point, and really doesn't know what to do. He's kind of lost, but he's also afraid to die. And that kind of is where the conflict of the film comes in, because Aaron really has to find both the courage to live and to face his own mortality. So, that is an interesting idea. However, the execution of that story is wildly inconsistent. When it's focusing on Aaron and his struggle and his internal debate that he's having about everything that's happened to him, the darkness that he feels like's inside of him, the chaos and death that he's experienced, and when it's focusing on that, it is quite interesting. However, there are a lot of moments in the film where the movie just stops and does nothing to progress the story or the characters' arcs. And that is a problem. Now, in a fantasy story, you are going to have times where you need to stop and let the audience just take in the world. And that is fine. But in this film, there's almost too many moments in the middle where it's just trying to showcase the world and showcasing everything that's going on in it without giving us a character perspective or a reason to really care about what's going on. And this all comes to a head when the third act starts up, and it just starts barrel rolling towards the end, and it starts to go out of control and starts to move very fast at a breakneck speed that doesn't match the slower speed that it had been going through during the rest of the film. So the tone and the pacing feels a little off at times. Furthermore, this philosophical debate is fascinating, but in the end of the film, it gets resolved too cleanly. Now, I'm going to get into specifics here. If you haven't seen Tales from Earthsea, I do recommend streaming it and checking it out. But I feel like I can't fully break down the story or do an analysis without talking about the ending and resolution. That resolution being Aaron killing Cobb solves all the problems. That should not have been the case. Now, I don't mind the film ending semi-happily. I just think it should have ended on a note where it says, yes, we are moving forward, but the balance shouldn't be completely fixed just by killing Cobb. Man has always strived for what Cobb is trying to get at. So, just by man's existence, the balance should still be out of whack. So you would think that in some way or form, the balance would still need fixing by the end of the film. But as soon as Cobb's dead, everything kind of resolves itself, and that just feels hollow. And that's Ursula Le Guin's problem with the film overall as well. She felt like her stories were more ambiguous about the relationship between good and evil, and how good and evil don't really get vanquished, or how they kind of coincide with each other. And instead of doing something like that, the film goes with a much more simpler route, and that's kind of a shame. This isn't really helped by the fact that none of the characters are developed as well as they could have been. The only character we really get a lot with is Aaron, and he's just not that interesting of a character because we don't get to know anything about him before he stabs his father. We don't even really get to understand why he did that. It just kind of happens, and the film doesn't really bring it up and doesn't even explore why he did that. It's kind of weird, and by the end of the movie, I was still like, so why did he stab his dad? And it never really gets answered. And that's really a shame. And all these problems are a shame with the movie because, honestly, I think the movie is well made. I really like the animation. I love the backgrounds. I love the way the world looks. And I really would have loved to explore it more. But with the story we had, it just really taxed my patience at times. The music's also really well done. I love the score here. And I really liked listening to it when I was done watching the movie. It's a shame that both of these things have to go into this film because I just felt like the story just didn't work for Tales from Earthsea. It's not awful by any definition of the word, it's just nowhere near as good as it could have been. And I think that's the real problem with Tales from Earthsea. There's so much wasted potential. As I said earlier, I recommend streaming this one. I do recommend checking it out because when doing research on this film, I found there was an eclectic amount of opinions. A lot of people like this film, a lot of people hate this film, a lot of people are indifferent about this film. So this is definitely a movie you have to watch to really get your own opinion on. You might not agree with me, and you might end up liking the film or hating the film. Either way, I definitely think it's worth checking out. I have the DVD because I bought this on a whim. I checked out what the Blu-ray had for special features. There wasn't anything that really stood out to me. So either way, I don't think that it's worth adding to your collection based off that alone. So that's my opinion on Tales from Earthsea. What do you think about it if you've seen it? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. And next time, we take a look at A Farewell to Arms. See you then.